Hello everyone, this is Tom. I hope you're doing well today. It's already September 2021 and it's time for a tag. I have been kindly tagged by Rose at Scully Handling about the books, and I really like this tag. It's a brilliant one that's been created by SHAWN the Book Maniac. So I'm gonna put all the details below. The title of the tag is the Mookse and the Gripes Bucket List Book Tag. There is a podcast with the same name, Mookse and the Gripes, and so SHAWN asked us to make sure that the title of the podcast is here because that's what it's inspired by, and I believe the podcast title is inspired by the James Joyce novel by the same title, which I haven't read, but I know it's out there. And I love it. I love this tag because it's all about the future. Generally, tags are about the past and books that we have already read and we talk about. In this case, it's focusing on future books that we really want to read, but we haven't yet. And so let's get to it. It's a list of 10 books, and I hope this can also inspire your reading as well. So, being a slow reader, as I am, in order to read longish history books, I generally need a certain mental space, which during my usual work week, it's difficult for me to find. It's a personal thing. So I try to find spaces like at least long weekends or vacations and holidays to read these particular books. And I have actually 3 history books that I really look forward to reading in my list. The first one is Stalin, The Court of the Red Tsar by Simon Sebag Montefiore. It's a book that, in fact, my brother advised me and suggested to read. I know it's a great one because I've heard great reviews. And that entire chapter of history, everything that is connected with Stalin directly and indirectly, has a great fascination on me. So I just look forward to reading this one. The second history book is called Congo, The Epic History of a People. And I've read many seriously impressed reviews from magazine critics, newspaper critics about this book as a history book, but a very serious and deep history book about the history of Congo, which is maybe not the easiest history to research and to gather the proper information about. I've noticed that Peg at the history bookshelf also just bought this book, and so it went back as my priorities in my TBR list. And I cannot wait to read this one, to start it soon, probably next year at this point. And the third one is probably more famous than the other 2, The Proud Tower, A Portrait of the World Before the War by Barbara Tuchman, very famous historian, celebrated historian in fact, by whom I've read already 1 or 2 books about the First World War, and the way she writes is enchanting for being a historian. So she has an incredible skill as a narrator, as a historian. So this must be just as wonderful as the other books that she wrote. The next 4 are books of fiction that are classics, are very famous, and for one reason or the other, I never got around to reading them, and I cannot wait to read them because there is no specific reason why I didn't get to them yet. I know they're wonderful in themselves. For example, the first one is The Lord of the Rings, and by Tolkien, that everyone knows. I confess that I kind of stayed away purposely from The Lord of the Rings because as a kid, as a young boy, I approached it and found the first maybe 200 pages really boring and just put it down and never touched it since. But the more and more I understand about this book, from commentaries, from reviews, or even theologians Like, for example, Peter Kreeft, who's a theologian that I really admire, and I saw a video on YouTube where he was raving about The Lord of the Rings, and he explained why he loves the book so much. I was completely sold. So I said, okay, I was probably wrong. I'm gonna go back and read The Lord of the Rings and do a proper judgment, at least after having read it all, and not only as a 12-year-old or 13-year-old. So that's gonna be very interesting. The second one, again very famous, is Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh, and I've seen the videos by Steve Donoghue about this one and many other booktubers that I follow. Everyone says that this is just a magnificent book, and it deserves to be enjoyed, again, with a little bit of mental space. This is my own pet peeve for big and interesting and intense books. I don't want to just slip them through my work week. I need a little bit of mental freedom to properly enjoy them, so I will do that. The next one is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So nothing much to say about this. I actually do not know anything about the plot of this book, so please don't spoil it. Please don't spoil it for me. I know it's a great one, and I'm really excited about reading it. I will do soon, within the next year or so, maybe a year and a half. And the next fiction book is Emma by Jane Austen. I read a few Jane Austen books, love them all, like them all, but Emma I haven't. So this will be an experience for me, the first experience in reading Emma, which, by the way, I also do not know the plot or even what it talks about, aside from it probably talks about Emma. And the last three of my list are religious books or theology books. The first one is by Peter Kreeft, who I already mentioned. He's a really great theologian, still alive, still working. He must have written something like 100 books at least. And this one is called A Summa of the Summa. In other words, is a summary of the Summa Theologica by St. Thomas Aquinas. The Summa Theologica was one of my crazy projects. I said to myself, I want to read it all from beginning to end. Then I realized it's actually 4,400 pages, 4,500 pages, depending on the edition. And I said, well, I mean, time is kind of precious, and I'm also a slow reader. So let's try to find a solution. And the Summa of the Summa seems to be a good solution because it's a very solid theologian who helps you in a more digestible way to go through St. Thomas' Summa Theologica, with highlights, of course. It's not the entire work, and his commentary within something like 800 pages. I really truly look forward to this one, especially because I probably will do this as a buddy read with my friend Jason Harrigan in Ireland. And of course, anyone who's interested can jump on the train, and this will be probably next year. The next one is St. Augustine, The City of God, which in bits and pieces I've been reading throughout all my life. I loved the Confessions so much, even if it's a different type of work. The City of God is more heavily theological and philosophical, and there is a little bit of history too. It's a big, let's say, it's not an attack, but it's a deconstruction of paganism in favor of Christianity by St. Augustine, and it's one of those foundational works by a father of the church that can only enrich your religious and spiritual life. And finally, The Story of a Soul, the autobiography of Saint Therese of Lisieux. I heard many great things about this book. I know a little bit about Saint Therese and her biography, how impactful she's been on so many, not only religious people, prominent people, but also authors, politicians, spiritual writers, really a giant, and in the world of spiritual literature. So this is really a diamond that I'm looking forward to as well. That's it. That's my 10 books list. And like Shawn was recommending, I don't know if this is part of the actual original tag or only a plus, but I like the idea. I would love for you to indicate 2 out of these 10 titles that maybe you prefer, or in any case you would suggest me to read first, or at least within the next year or so. And I've done the same with Rose, with Shawn. So I like this type of interactive tag. Again, thank you to Shawn for creating it, and thanks so much to Rose for tagging me. Thank you for watching.